Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kanchi Shah, and I head the EMEA business for StrategINK. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming you all to the Boardroom Unplugged 2.0. On behalf of Dell Technologies, Microsoft, Intel, and New Wave Computing. The Boardroom Unplugged is a virtual conference addressed by eminent industry thought leaders. Over the next 3 hours, we look forward to high impact conversations and immensely valuable business and technology insights. We appreciate you taking time off your busy schedules to join us today. Ladies and gentlemen, we also urge you to make the best use of today's virtual conference platform. In addition to the auditorium sessions, we request you to visit the virtual exhibition booth in the exhibit area and chat with experts. Also, do visit the resource center where the conference assets can be downloaded. The networking lounge is available to meet and interact with your peers. Should you need any further assistance, please do not hesitate to visit the help desk in the lobby, and a member of Team StrategINK will be happy to help. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we kickstart today's session. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Sudeep K. Goswami, Director and General Manager, South Region for Dell Technologies, to join us and deliver the keynote address. Over to you, Sudeep.
Dear friends and colleagues, thank you for joining us today. I wish all of you are keeping safe and that your families are safe too. I know last 15 months, like I have been operating out of this work desk at home, all of us are, and we all wish that this pandemic will go away. Till then, I think we'll have to work with how we are doing and what we are doing. And that brings me to a question, at present, an important question for organizations, which is how effective our leadership is in the face of uncertainties and their adjacent complexities that it brings. How easy was it for us to adopt work from home within a matter of 2-3 weeks? How easy is it still that it's expanding and we need to also tackle pressures of cybersecurity, growing data, as well as growing expectation from customers? Now, dealing with this question, many organizations and leaders have changed how they lead in expedient and ingenious ways. I have seen customers plan way ahead of time and change or chalk out changes in what they wanted to do in the year to handle the pandemic. I've seen customers improvise on their hiring strategy so that they're able to align to the economic growth or resurgence in a sector whenever that happens. The changes may have come out of necessity, but I think they have solid business potential beyond this crisis. So then, if there's a lesson there, I think the question becomes, how should leaders prepare for increased resurgence, value creation, and acceleration in change? I've seen sectors like healthcare and insurance, banking, and to some extent retail use a lot of innovative methods in their business models to serve the customer. I think there is a Google page full of links which talks about automation in the insurance industry and how they are using drones, or how IT industry is reimagining their solutions to the customers, be them mid-tier IT or top-tier IT as well. So, personally speaking, I think the answer lies perhaps in technology and the potential it offers when matrixed with human capital. So then the next question becomes, how should organizations develop a digital first business model to gain competitive advantage and transform value delivery that customers pay for? I think in the last 15 months, you would have seen many brands come out trumps or seem to have done much better than their illustrious colleagues and competitors. I think I've seen that in auto, I've seen that in telco, and I've seen that again in healthcare and pharma. If you look at the common threads in many of those, I believe sunrise technologies such as automation, data sciences, AI, ML, as well as emerging ones like computer vision, Li-Fi, quantum computing. These, these technologies offer groundbreaking application areas which are increasingly being implemented across industry verticals, some much faster than others. I have seen my system integration colleagues, the Indian six and the global, like IBM and Accenture, excel in delivering this value to their customers. So with this context, I believe organizations need to rethink their org setup and embed digital in their DNA to be competitive and reap the benefits of customer preference. When I say embed, that doesn't mean we adopt technologies, but we should tailor our customer paths or customer journeys in such a way that the process takes care of the embedded digital that it has. For example, and again, much touted example, if insurance companies can use drones to do a survey after a crash has been detected, how should the process change so that all of this can now be done within the first hour of the crash and not wait for physical intervention as people go and inspect? So that's how I think technology should get embedded. And I believe we at Dell Technologies understand that this journey needs to happen in organizations. With our wide and comprehensive portfolio, we have the experience and capability to assist Indian industry undertake such audacious journeys at this point in time, but also into the future. Hundreds of customers have told us that we and our partners have been critical to the success. So I hope in today's session, you are able to take away the fact that we can help complete your transformation journey. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy today's session.
Thank you very much, Sudeep. That was indeed insightful. With that, we now move forward to our next session, which is Disruption Decoded. Disruption Decoded is a boardroom conversation involving accomplished business leaders whose agendas are focused on resetting for growth beyond disruption and re energizing the organization for the long run. How do they plan to approach the task of actively managing workforce energy, cultivate the quality of employee relationships, and demonstrate a capacity for resilience to recharge their organizations towards growth and success? Join me in welcoming Mr. N.C. Chakraborty, Vice President and Head, Smart Manufacturing, Reliance Industries Limited; Mr. Amit Das, Director, HR and CHRO, Bennett Coleman Company Limited, The Times of India Group; and Mr. Murli Iyer, CFO, Volvo Construction Equipment India, who are in a conversation with Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, Chief Research Officer, StrategINK Solutions.
Hello and good morning. My name is Arjun Vishwanathan. I'm the Chief Research Officer at StrategINK. And our panel discussion today at the Boardroom Unplugged 2.0 is one which begs immense importance and the study and very, very close examination of what a company's vision for the future must be. Increasingly, with the backdrop of the disruption that we've just seen globally over the last 15 odd months. Our panel discussion is also going to focus on how transformative technologies are entering the workspace at an exponential speed, bringing the change businesses need to not just survive, but also thrive. Collaboration between enterprises, modern ways of engaging with the customer base, more innovation within the workforce itself, and the ability, of course, to draw valuable insights from data are just several of the very key benefits that will help organizations and industry perhaps as a whole reimagine the very concept of how work must be orchestrated. And to join me in my panel discussion, please put your hands together for, in no specific order, Mr. Amit Das, Director HR and Chief Human Resource Officer at the Benton Coleman Company Limited, Times of India Group. Mr. Das, welcome, sir. Privileged to have you with us.
Thank you, Arjun. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Mr. N.C. Chakrabarti, Vice President and Head of Smart Manufacturing, Reliance Industries. Mr. Chakrabarti, delighted you could join us, so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
And Mr. Murli Iyer, Chief Financial Officer, Volvo CE India. Murli, thank you for taking out time. Truly privileged, sir.
Thank you so much, Arjun. Likewise. Looking forward.
Gentlemen, what we are going to discuss over the dialogue that we're going to have over the next 30 minutes is well fascinating, because we are somewhere really re-examining, realigning, and perhaps reimagining the very concept of work. And Mr. Chakrabarti, if I could bring that to you, if the last 15 months, and in the backdrop of the last 15 months, there have been multiple lessons that we've learned. When you kind of boil that down together, how do you see the whole concept of the future of work emerging?
Yeah, thanks. I'm really thankful for and delighted to speak in these things. So I will mainly talk around manufacturing. And in last 15 months, or I'll rather say that it is not last 15 months, maybe in last few years, there's a significant transformation is going on in this direction. And with new technologies in hand, significant portion of workflows and workforces are mobile, and working locations are becoming more and more flexible.
Indeed.
And this pandemic actually accelerated this. Even a few years ago, it was unthinkable for some of the companies to allow their workforce to work remotely. And now those companies are actually sustained fully with complete remote work from certain functions of works. And even in manufacturing, the factories are operated with a bare minimum number of people at shop floor, and having rest of the workflow supporting and collaborating remotely. And it was possible because of the adoption of the technologies that companies started a few years ago. Technologies like data-driven decision-making using artificial intelligence, advanced automation, IoT, industrial robots, and drones supported by computer vision technologies. And now, once unlocked, our workplace are not going to be as it was a year and a half ago. Some people continue to work remotely, and some will still work at the factory floor. And there also may be a hybrid work environment.
It's a very fascinating point, and I like the word that you use, which is a very hybrid work environment, because Mr. Das, I'm going to bring that point across to you. Times of India Group, extremely large, multiple offices, huge sets of employees. Given the last 15 months, how perhaps are you, Mr. Das, realigning or reimagining the strategies that will allow for unfettered, unhindered work to continue, keeping the safety of the employee, travel, and so on and so forth in mind? How are you reimagining the future of work? Mr. Das.
Yeah, see, Arjun, while all of us know that the VUCA has become the new normal for the business world for quite some time now, as Mr. Chakrabarti has also mentioned about it, it's not only the last 15 months, but the disruption like the current one due to pandemic that all of us have witnessed in the last 15 months has really been the acid test for all of us leadership across global organizations. So we are already witnessing the emergence of newer business models, the influx of new age workforce like the millennials and the Gen Zs that we talk about today, and also the sweeping digital disruptions. That's one of the core subjects that we'll be discussing today in this panel discussion. So when we try to imagine the future world of work, we, I think, need an incredible amount of foresight and planning about the business and the way we manage this workplace. when this entire world of work is recalibrating itself into a new normal or next normal, the way you want to define it. So going forward, I can clearly foresee a simultaneous transformation of what I said 3 Ws, the work, workforce, and workplace. And few emerging trends at the workplace, which in my mind will become the new normal, will be the Gen Z, as I said, entering the workforce and disrupting the status quo, the flexible and remote work schedules leading to work-life integration more and more investments in employee well-being and inclusivity, which you hinted upon, fulfillment of social purpose for our employees through the jobs or the roles that they need to deliver, the flexible workforce on multiple assignments in a gig economy, and enhanced collaboration of man and machine. So every disruption also throws up a kind of opportunity as long as we are agile enough to spot it and adapt it for the better. So workplace itself has been digital for a long time, for example, where the employees across global geographies were connected virtually across, offices using technology. But the current situation has thrown up an opportunity to build a digital workforce. We all know that the biggest barrier for any transformation is the resistance to change. And the current pandemic, in my mind, even though inadvertently, has brought that urgency for that much needed change in the organization.
It is very interesting. And Murali, I'm going to come to you with that, because if you look at it, this pandemic, this disruptions perhaps acted as a very inadvertent natural catalyst for people to adopt and embrace with much more agility and speed than they would have traditionally done. But when you look at it from your perspective, Volvo CE, how are you folks, when you have your conversations in the boardroom, when all of you kind of confabulate, how are you approaching this concept of how you're going to seamlessly perhaps leverage this opportunity to converge human capital and technology to form a digital workforce and a digital workspace of the future?
So Arjun, it's been an interesting journey. So let me go back to March 24th last year when the lockdown was announced, right? And I sat back suddenly thinking, oh my God, how are we going to manage? Because the directions were clear. You have to, ensure that the suppliers get paid, and
the entire structure has to still run, right? And it shouldn't come to a grinding halt. And that actually, I went back and started looking at what's happening in our product side, because we're a manufacturing industry, and we've already been in a big way starting to work towards AI on automation and everything. So, and I said, what more can we do, and how do we do this? And I actually, the first thing that came to my mind is, I don't know if you remember the scene from Three Idiots where Rancho is asked the question, what's a machine? And he describes that anything that makes human effort easier, right? Or reduces human effort. And then from there, I started to connect. And if you take our industry, we come from an industry where transportation was, let's say, was first in one sense done by humans. Then let's take the invention of wheel happened, and the horse cart came in. Then the first industrial revolution came in, and you brought in the steam engines came in, and the gas turbine engines came in, and the horse got replaced by horsepower. And then the second phase came in with electricity and telecommunication, and then finally computing and data. And that's the stage where we are on the high right now and ready to leap to the next stage, which is AI and nanotechnology and 3D printing and all that, which is going to come together. And for us, then it became as much as the work on our product side had begun, right? We were still, to some extent, traditional in terms of our workforce, right? We are a manufacturing heavy industry. So that's the journey then we started to begin. And for me, in my, let's say, my own particular department, right? It began with that I have a mix of Gen Zs and millennials, and a big equal mix of baby boomers, right? And most of these baby boomers retiring over a period of, let's say, 4 to 5 years now. That is what is in the process. And what that started me on a journey of is to adopt technologies like robotics to eliminate, and this is now spread across the organization, where we are trying to eliminate areas where there is repetitive non-value add work. Because what the Gen Z and the millennials look forward to is a work where there is more value add. They want to look at areas where, there is always a knowledge expansion. And for us as organizations, as Mr. Amit and Mr. Chakravarti were saying, that it will be more or less that we as organizations will have to transform ourselves as business schools, providing no more reskilling and upskilling, rather than providing opportunities to learn and expand knowledge and grow. We have challenges of employee loyalty, because people will move, and because the need is for gaining more wider knowledge and applying it and growing that way. And at the same time, with the intervention of robotics and the robots coming into play, you as humans will probably be just observers and only course correctors of decisions, many cases where the robotics will...
With oversight, perhaps.
Yes, exactly. And this is the journey we have really started to now work on in the organization and across the industry. I mean, it's not that we are alone in it, and I think it's happening across industry right now.
That's very powerfully articulated, because Mr. Chakravarti, I am going to come to you. Murli also, again, in the manufacturing segment, you as head of smart manufacturing, as we progress towards a more technology-driven future, how do you think this convergence of human capital and technology and future technologies as they come could converge to truly transform our concepts of resilience, so that we're never ever caught in a situation like we were perhaps 16, 18 months back? Mr. Chakrabarti, what is your view on that?
Yeah, thanks. I think being in manufacturing, I'll talk about around manufacturing. And as we know that in manufacturing, there is assembly of machines that actually vibrate across the people who are overseeing the machines to produce the product. And to make these things sustain, because some of the work that was being done by human being by this time has been completely automated, and people are actually moving towards doing the high-end jobs. The repetitive works are actually being reduced, and that helped us to cope with the pandemic, where we are having few people at the shop floor and to sustain the operations, and the technologies are helping us. And during the course of this, as we are actually not seeing the face-to-face, there is one of the difficulties that we're facing. That maybe one is that there was interesting one article that I was hearing, I was reading, is that people at present work at least 3 to 4 hours more every day while they're working at home.
Indeed.
And so what it becomes is that there is the family time and work office time has become blurred out now. And there is a complete flexibility here now. So there is a lot of advantage here. We got a lot of flexibility, while there is a lot of big challenges are coming up, is that, as you said, that there is a cultural shock that we are getting. We are there in office, we used to see the face, people in the face, and even if we are trying to do the brainstorming, remote online brainstorming is not as effective as it used to be when we used to be in a conference room. And that actually creating a lot of stress among ourselves.
That's actually a very valid point, Mr. Chakrabarti. And with your permission, Mr. Das, if I could come to you, a very, very poignant point that Mr. Chakrabarti brought up. Because my question to you, therefore, is as industry leaders, as you sit down today to plan for the future, a future that increasingly seems virtual, remote, digital, how do you factor in the whole concepts of experience, employee experience, employee well-being, mental health perhaps. How do you kind of factor that into your core strategy? Mr. Das.
Yeah, see, the organization leadership or the industry captains which you're talking about, they have to proactively now engage with the organization to create multiple scenarios. They have to take a scenario building approach and help the workforce understand the challenges and implications of each of these scenarios that's going to pan out in future. Okay, it's not one thing. They have to do multiple scenario building approach and kind of co-create the workflows, re-engineer the roles that's coming in, the new productivity metrics, and with the technology infusion and collaboration in mind. Okay, so this would mean it's an opportunity for interactions with all stakeholders moving seamlessly between physical and virtual mode. Okay, I think that the organization rearrangement will change the job demand itself. Okay, organizations will become more flexible and transparent with a focus on project-based relationships and also focusing on business sustainability. So as increased...
Are you saying that the gig economy as we know it is now going to come into increased focus and perhaps take on an increased proportion?
That's right. So if you look at talent, today's talent is any capability across the employee continuum, whether direct or indirect workforce or internal or external workforce, whoever can create economic value for the enterprise. That's talent for us today. Okay. So the talent is not physically restricted to any space and time. So talent management today is less about extracting performance from organized few, but more about curating contribution from limitless many. So when we transit into this new ecosystem of work, workplace, and workforce, we need to leverage the technology enablers and interconnectedness due to this, it is driven by this distributed and dynamic capability management. And that's the only way we can create future-ready talent networked organizations. So while the people agenda for us in organizations will continue to be the attracting the right talent, enriching and engaging the talent, driving performance and innovation-driven culture, but keeping in mind the dynamic business ecosystem, I think we need to embrace the theme of creating what we say the agile and anti-fragile talent. And that's the only way we can create a future-ready workforce for any kind of business uncertainties in future. So the ultimate goal for talent strategy of going forward will be to arrive at that ideal talent recipe for the next strategic business cycle, which provides a capability sweet spot, which maximizes the flexibility and access the right skills while simultaneously optimizing the cost.
That's very fascinating because Murali, if I come to you and ask you to once again wear the hat of a CFO, you know, Amit and Chakravarti mentioned about the whole concept of flexibility, transparency, and the triad of work, the workplace, and the workforce. Is it fiscally viable? And does it perhaps put a spoke through pretty much how traditionally, you know, businesses have been measured, outcomes have been measured? Therefore, with that in mind, how do you realign the whole concept of remeasuring or measuring in newer ways, business metrics and outcomes? Murali Iyer.
Yeah, so Arjun, I mean, taking on from where Mr. Das and Mr. Chakravarti was leading us to, right? I mean, if you want to look at whether it works physically for an organization.
Let me take you back to the fact that, I mean, in the organization, well, the group as such, and where I have been part of the headquarters, we have been on this transformation journey already about 3 years ago, three and a half years ago. Today, if you go to our global CEO's office, he doesn't have an office. He has just a desk, just in case he comes. And that desk is free for anybody to use, right?
Oh, when he's not there.
Yeah, when he's not there, right? This is now as an office workspace already prevalent all across, and getting prevalent more and more across the Volvo organization, across the group. And it has only allowed us improve our agility, flexibility, and ease of working, right? So as much as when we are on this journey, for us, what we have to do is to get a balance in this. We will have to have a transition because we are still in different parts of the world in different structures, right? And bound by different environments of work. And the transition will happen accordingly. But in the overall sense, it will bring us efficiency, faster decision-making for sure. And also in the net, be more beneficial. Coming to the fact that on how we measure and the matrices, right? Some of it will definitely change because you see, we will no more as an organization, and a lot of softer measures will, measurements and matrices will have to start to come into place. For example, are you a sustainable organization or are you not, right? Is because sustainability is going to be a big factor, not only from an, let's say, a government or a regulation perspective, but also from an employee perspective. Do I want to associate myself from with an organization that is sustainable and or is not sustainable, right? So matrices on sustainability, matrices on employee satisfaction and the mental health of and the well-being and how we are enablers to that will become very, very key to do that. And because in the end, the workforce will still contribute, right? And it is going to be a big contributor to the whole financial growth and the financial performance delivery for the organization. So the only thing, yes, some of the matrices will change, and we will have to work with them as we go forward, for sure.
Thank you. That was very interesting because, Mr. Chakrabarti, I must ask you this in all true measure, is that with increasingly decomposed workspaces, now if I were to take a step back, a physical workspace gave me the ability to touch and feel and collaborate, like you rightly mentioned, in a more cohesive atmosphere. Do you think productivity, collaboration, and perhaps innovation are going to be, if not severely, at least marginally impacted with the concept of digital workspaces and the reimagination of work by itself?
Yes, well, this is actually a lot of debates are there here, and it is gradually going to be unfolded, actually, whether it is impacting the productivity and innovation. But having said that, our experience of last 2.5 years almost, we can see that the digital and remote work is effectively improving the productivity. And that's because a lot of companies like ours, we have adopted the technology a few years ago. And obviously that time the speed at which we are adopting those technologies were not as faster now what we are doing it now. And having another angle of it is that at present the composition of the workflow are a little bit different, where there is almost half of the people are at the age of 30, and rest of the people are at different age groups. So in our experience, what we saw it is that people of 30s age groups are actually delivering much more than what they used to deliver in the time bound and office time. And the people who are actually off the gig, the people, if I say that baby boomers, they got a little bit slowed down. This is our own experience. However, as time is going on, and both of them are actually, this gap is being bridged gradually, and people are started getting adopting those things. I would like to give one example here of why it is suffering. At my when I used to do some technical things, for me, I become comfortable if I take a process instrumentation diagram in the hard paper, then reading it in. So I face some difficulties. But the person of 30s, my team members, they never saw a book, actually, a hard book. In their class, I think, and presently, they're reading all ebooks.
True
So
that.
they're much more comfortable than us. And then there is a gap, and then it is gradually getting praised with time. And it's not going to impact, it is going to improve our productivity.
That's a fantastic point, because Mr. Das, if I could come to you, from what Mr. Chakrabarti just said, do we therefore need to, or will we therefore move towards a time and a space and a domain where the concepts of collaboration, productivity, and perhaps innovation will themselves tend to change?
Yeah, it's a very interesting.
Not the least, I just to have a supplementary question to this is, while all of this is changing, how do you centralize the concept of experience for the employee in a remote kind of a model?
Yeah. So it's an interesting conversation happening all across the world of business about this productivity in this new hybrid kind of a work arrangement, how it's going to transform, how are you going to manage the productivity. So my take is very simple. In today's knowledge-driven network organization setup, where more and more employees will be remotely managing their deliverable, questions that all organizations today are faced with are, how do we know that our people will be fully productive? How do we know that we can ensure employees are not moonlighting, for example? But the answer lies in recalibrating our own mindset on this workplace and the workplace, okay? In the new normal of hybrid work arrangement. It's we, the generation, the baby boomers and the Gen X that we belong to, we are more concerned about this so-called productivity, okay, than actually the millennials and the Gen Zs who are born digital natives. Okay, so they don't care. They don't even think that there's a change. They are seamlessly moved into this, and they're highly excited about this, the endless opportunity this digitally connected world can bring into them. Okay, so I think the way we need to look at it is that when we are looking at, you have to look at three things: the technology, the deliverables, and the psychological contract between the organization and the workforce. So when it comes to, for example, the first part, the technology, we all know that automation is taking away a lot of those transactional jobs Murali was also mentioning from almost all kinds of activities and functions. Now, deployment of collaborative technology solutions like the MS Teams or whatever has enabled us to collaborate on a real-time basis. So analytics tools, for example, they can provide insights to the employees and their managers on how employees and their teams are using that on a real-time basis. The workplace analytics, that's helping leaders gain unprecedented enterprise-wide information about whether on the how the current collaboration patterns are helping the organization meet their targets, and what kind of contacts are missing, and time and networking trends which can help in addressing the complex business challenges. When it comes to the, for example, so I think we have to constantly look at opportunities to leverage technology to not only drive productivity, but also take over such routine transactional work across all functions, which results in building a more optimized, agile, and engaged organization.
An engaged organization, no, that is. So,
say, for example, when it comes to the psychological contract part, which we are talking about, what Chester Bernard had mentioned, that he had identified it as an individual employee's zone of indifference. Okay, it is based on some unwritten expectation between the individual and the organization. For example, the individuals expect good bosses, and the organization expect effort and loyalty. So the individual expectation. Absolutely, the individuals constantly seeks a career, not just a job anymore. Yet the organization in turn expect the initiative and the creativity. So the emerging themes that are coming up in the psychological contracts now are around work-life integration, flexible working arrangements, and portfolio careers.
That is so true. I couldn't have put it better. But gentlemen, I do have a view on the clock. So Murali, I'm going to come to you with a very important question there. For now that we've heard a wide spectrum of views, your essential guidance on how it is perhaps necessary to decompose existing value chains and processes to truly infuse a culture of digital native thought within the enterprise. Now, is that a pipeline or is there guidance that you, and gentlemen, all of you, but we'll start with Murali, you can let this wonderful audience who's tuning in today, let us know what guidance is in being able to even approach the journey.
Right. So let me start by, I'm a lazy person, right, by nature, right? So I don't like working hard, right? I mean, I want more time to myself and my family and, and things that I love to do, right?
So way back in 2000, when I went and visited one of the most advanced engine plants in the Volvo Group, I found one of our industrial colleagues in the operation line. The engine is being built, right? But he's just put on his headphones and reading a magazine with his legs up on the desk, and the whole operation is running, right? Of course, everything was automated and the robotics had come into play already. Right? That's the dream that I have for myself, right? And it is not taking too much time to realize that. Today, if you look at it, right, if you took me 5 years ago in any of my roles, or even my seniors as CFOs, right, most of them spent at least 3-4 days preparing an MIS after the consolidation of the results and the financials is done, right? Today, I don't. Today, the whole thing gets consolidated, and the next day I have everything on Power BI, right? And it's out down there. I just have to pick the slice, just make one executive summary, and that's it. I'm explaining the results out to the management team. The future, right, this is what it is. It will begin with us adopting in areas and being flexible in areas and eliminating where it is not required, where AI and technology and digitization can come in and play the role. While that is happening, to enable this, right, we have to build organizations where you have a continuous dialogue with employees and engagement with employees on a regular basis. It's not anymore going to be a performance review once in every quarter or once in 6 months. It has to be over a cup of coffees. It has to be over, samosa and chai, or whatever you want, or whatever you like, a bonda or bhaji or whatever it is, right? Because that is where the meaning is going to come out, and the real discussions are going to happen. So that is also another part of the reality that we need to adapt and change to. While we are doing this, it has to happen through a gradual process. And that's the role for us as leaders, to steer that and to see what we need to do at this stage and what's the next step. And this is what our roles as we move forward become more and more important, and where we will continue to contribute.
Absolutely fantastic. If you could just stay with me for one more question. I've got
sure.
My analyst and moderation greed will not allow me to do this. Murli, if you could sum it all up in one statement, one biggest learning, personal or professional, that the last 15 months have taught you, be with you for a long, long time to come.
That change is constant, and just be ready for, keep preparing for it. There is no end to that.
Mr. Chakrabarti, your one biggest lesson learned that's going to stay with you for a long, long time to come.
Okay, so I think the last maybe 15-16 months taught me one thing, is that there is no age of learning, and the time has gone when we graduated and we started coming to our work and continue to work for next 30 years and then retire. Now every day is a retirement day, and every day is a learning day. So reinvent oneself, reskill it, and going forward. That's the what is the.
Can't agree more. Can't agree more.
Absolutely. And Das, your biggest learning, sir, that's going to stay with you for a long, long time, and perhaps has been life-changing at all.
Yeah, I firmly believe that organizations who can successfully navigate technology and at the same time maintain that human touch while being agile will eventually emerge as winners. So this can only be ensured when the industry captains, which you're talking about, can build a compelling talent culture, which recognizes and fosters the trust, collaboration, learning agility, and innovation, so that people view this change as an opportunity to enhance their own capabilities, adapt, and lead an enriching life, and not be engulfed with the fear of uncertainty, ambiguity, and extinction.
That's so true, gentlemen. And gentlemen, really, this has been nothing short of fantastic. And this is a subject that, well, merits at least another 45 minutes of conversation, to say the least. But in this segment, that's pretty much what we have time for. With Das, Iyer, Mr. Chakrabarti, it has been nothing short of scintillating and a privilege to have heard your views. Thank you for taking your time and joining us today. We are truly
Thank
privileged.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
And for the audience, you were with your host Arjun Vishwanathan. I was in conversation with Mr. Amit Das, Mr. Lee Iyer, and Mr. N.C. Chakrabarti on reimagining the future of work. Stay tuned with us, and we'll be back with the next segment in just a moment.
What an engaging conversation that brought out such immersive insights and gems of wisdom. I'm sure all the insights will be invaluable to each one of us in multiple ways. Thank you very much, Mr. N.C. Chakraborty, Mr. Amit Das, and Mr. Murli Iyer. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we now move forward to the next segment titled Boardroom Diaries. Now, that name does make a few of you frown. Not to worry. The set of ammunition used in this war room is technology. And the enemies we defeat here are old and obsolete business models, lack of digital innovation, and sluggish pace of transformation. For the War Room Diaries, please join me in welcoming Mr. Unmesh Deshpande, the CTO, Kingsway Hospital, Mr. Siva Subramanian M, Global CIO, VA Tech Wabag, and moderating this session, I welcome back Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, the Chief Research Officer, StrategINK. Over to you, Arjun.
Hello and welcome to the Boardroom Diaries. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, your host, and I today am going to be in conversation with eminent industry leaders and IT practitioners in their own right to talk about how, as executive leaders, they are approaching the very journey of refashioning vision and strategy to combat disruption, drive agility and competitiveness, and at the end of the day, build more resilience within industry and enterprises by themselves. My conversations are also going to focus on how IT leaders should make vision and mission a reality with the judicious use of technology and emergent technologies without compromising employee experience and security. To join me in my panel discussion, please put your hands together to welcome in no specific order, Unmesh Deshpande, Chief Technology Officer, Kingsway Hospital, Nagpur. Unmesh, delighted you could join us today.
Thank you.
And Siva Subramanian, M, Global CIO for VA Tech Wabag. Siva, welcome. We are privileged that you could join us today.
Thank you, Arjun. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Siva, with your permission, I'm going to come to you really. Is that increasingly how, as senior IT leaders, IT professionals who are perhaps neck deep in technology, how are you approaching the whole concepts of creating more resilience with the use of technology now that we have the experience of this disruption over the last 15 months? How should the approach be, and what is your strategy as an IT leader?
See, there are, I think I've already spoken in a couple of forums. So I think, see, we have seen the entire cycle of work from home. So, and gradually moving from work from home to work from office, maybe 25%, 30%, 50%, 75, 100%. Again, we've gone back to the kind of work from home. Now, if you look at right now, I'm in office and we started working from the office now. This industry is basically, it's never thought that it will work from home will continue or it will be there because of the nature of this industry. There are certain things like now we started realizing the technology can definitely helps to do the work from home options as well. And we keep producing some kind of productivity report in terms of how many meetings have been there and what are the number of participants and what are the different technologies, how we are helping business to add the value. And we are also looking at the issues of what we can come up with, because if you look at the perennial problems are like network bandwidth issue, and the people who have systems and laptops and the performance, and how do you connect the Wi-Fi to the desktops, and it's most of these things are which are all in their local networks, not in the corporate network. Security is again a threat. So I think going forward, I think we need to have a proper systems. Like now we are also thinking about doing a kind of implementing BOID policy now. So we are in the process of implementing, and now in the conceptualization stage. I am drafting the BOID policy now. Maybe in a week or so, I think we should be able to come up with uh, the way ahead for that particular point of this thing. And as far as the workforce who are already in the move, we have a platform. We have thought about it and see how do you track your manpower who are there in the field. So we have something in terms of geofencing, tracking kind of systems where the field workforce, where we have one of the two projects where Agra and Ghaziabad, the entire network of severe network is managed by us. So that is without.
The point you bring out, Siva, because with your permission, I'm going to take that to Unmesh. Unmesh, now what Siva is really talking about, and when you kind of boil it all down together, the intent and the endeavor for enterprises and organizations today within industry is to create a more connected workspace, which is not defined by the boundaries of geography, space, and time, allowing for the truest forms of collaboration. In your estimate and your experience, how should organizations approach the concept of digital workspaces?
See, the demand on IT has ever increased after this COVID-19 situation has cropped up in the world. This pandemic has been a very severe teacher to all of us. I mean, when I say severe teacher, I look at it in a positive way because it has been a good guide as well. It has shown us and it has made us to think differently. Rather than doing too many different things and making a mess out of it, we try to do things differently. For example, we enabled our workforce who are on field to log in their report directly from their mobile phones. Ubiquity and ubiquitousness of a person was more important. What it created a lot of opportunity for our internal IT team and development team to have a better, more intuitive UIs for our applications. If you have a very easy to follow UI, people do enter reports. So it generates a lot of MIS on which analytics can be done. Then automation of various forms. You know, when you're working in an organization, you need to use multiple forms on your ERP system or HIS system. If those can be intuitively automated.
No, that's very interesting because Siva, if I could bring that to you. Now, you started off by saying earlier we used to work from home or remotely. Today we are working from office, at least in your case. Of course, I continue to work from home. My concept.
You're a blessed person.
Yes, but as you progress towards a more digital workspace by itself, thereby allowing your employees or contractors or consultants to have the flexibility of really working from anywhere. What, according to you, are those fundamental technologies that will go a long way in enabling this and making this happen? So my question really is, when you look at an approach to the future of work, what are those underlying technologies that you think are going to be imperative?
See, it like Mr. Unmesh said, he has very clearly said people have to be working from anywhere and anytime and any device. So it should be whatever the technology, whatever we develop, or it's in the IT strategy, it should have a platform agnostic so that you don't need to really worry about which OS is it and which platform it has to be running. So it should be from any mobile. Maybe now we are talking about mobile, maybe tomorrow something else. That is one, and things like IoT could also help. Now we are also thinking of announcing it and keeping the unmanned treatment plants which we can operate from.
Using a lot of IoT, wouldn't you?
Yeah, we do use IoTs, but that is only for collecting the health information about a patient on bed. But going forward, for patient, not as such a clinical treatment, but patient experience. We are a very large hospital and there are various corridors and there are some eat out places and there are some interesting departments. So if patient is walking with his phone and he is registered on my Wi-Fi, as soon as he passing a executive health checkup booth or executive health checkup area, he would get an annunciation on his phone. okay, all these tests are available and available at a discount price. So, you know, this magnet effect of using IoT and geofencing and BLE enabled networks will be our one of the priorities.
But Siva, at the same time, while we're talking about a lot of these technologies, there's also something that is also very fundamental. And I speak about myself as an employee, hypothetically, is the whole concept of experience. How in your estimate, how in your approach, in your strategy, should employee experience and employee expectations be balanced with enterprise expectations?
See, it is like it has to be whatever we do, it should be a win-win situation. So I'll just give you a simple example. Earlier, we used to have a ERP-based HRMS system. So we has to log in and he has to put, even for applying for a leave, we should go for some 8-9 clicks after logging and stuff like that. And even for the immediately for the supervisor also, he has to go to some 5-6 steps to approve one particular person's leave. Okay, it is very cumbersome. So people used to say, so that what happens is bosses don't generally approve the leaves. What happens is it is going to be it will be kind of LOP or the deduction in the leave from the employee perspective. So there are some organizations which will have a rule of within 3 days the boss is not approving, then it has to be
auto approved.
No, it is not auto approved, it is auto cancelled. Okay. So this is the kind of scenario. Now what we have done is we have done away with all this. So now in a click of button in the mobile app itself, we can apply it and even the approval process happens. So what happens is the entire SLA of creating and even from the approval policy, everything is now changed. So it's, people see it's a very drastic changes in terms of the friendliness and the usability.
That's fascinating, actually, and I really loved your anecdotal thing about auto cancellation, because I remember there was this one particular organization that I was working for a long time back. We had to go to a portal to resign, and I was planning to move on, and that to get to that point where you would click submit was like a 11-click process. So we used to joke that one of the reasons people don't resign is because it's just so difficult to do that. But Unmesh, I'm bringing the same question to you really, is how do you balance in a remote work, future of work or digital workspace where I have the ability to work from anywhere? How do you balance employee expectations versus enterprise expectations from the lens of technology?
The scenario in our case, especially healthcare industry, is slightly different. Very few people in our kind of setup have a luxury of working from anywhere.
I know.
Because most of them are nurses treating the patient on the floor, or the housekeeping staff, the consulting doctors, RMO, and surgeon. I mean, technology is not still so advanced that a surgeon can perform a surgery remotely. He has to be present there in the operation theater to do that, right? So there are many things which we have really planned and strategized to bring to the user level. Such as the example what Shiva gave about leave application. So similarly, we are developing so many in-house apps which can be delivered quickly to the employees to really use and make get benefit out of it. But at the same time, when you deliver such quick solutions, you have to be very careful, because many times haste make waste. And by solving one problem, you're creating few others. So design and the deployment of any application, it is well integrated from the perspective of business intelligence and the security perspective. They are always one up from decent guys like us. But when we deployed moving threat defense, their initially identified target is not there when they are actually attacking.
Agreed.
First case is always the probe, and then second case is the actual attack.
So that's very interesting, because I'm going to bring that to Siva with your permission. Siva, so, the concepts of a digital workspace now increasingly, because there's a digital workforce also, a lot of the millennials, a lot of the 18 plus, 20 plus folks who are coming into industry for work are preferring convenience, flexibility, and experience over money. That's also quite the reality. My question to you, however, borders on the point of, look, you yourself experienced work from home or remote work across large teams. Do you think, and how do you see collaboration, productivity, and innovation being able to get accelerated despite the remote work or the digital workspace kind of a concept coming into play?
See, I think there is always discomfort and disconnect if you are working from home. So though we may all make
Feel that, do you?
Yeah, we may all claim that. See, as far as the productivity or deliverable is concerned, yes, I'm not saying that there is a lag, but as far as there is a personal touch and there is a personal connect, which is always missing, and in between teams there are lots of misunderstanding and miscommunication. All that is bound to happen. So maybe proper technologies like there are lots of collaboration platforms which are already available. Maybe if everything is put into one common bucket, then maybe there is the possibility that there may not be any kind of this kind of personal touch, or these things are not missing.
No, that's actually that's quite an interesting point of view, because Unmesh, I'm going to bring the same thing to you. Now, even if, so I understand from the healthcare perspective, but if the future, and one that is already manifest in many ways, is going to be more about digital workspaces and the ability to work from anywhere, what are those imperatives that you think organizations should put into place to foster a true sense of collaboration, deliver and measure true productivity, and therefore lead to better innovation?
See, there could be two aspects of achieving that. First aspect is creating that culture to adopt to the digitization of multiple processes of an organization. I mean, there could be some events where a person goes and signs a register with a pen, and he feels assured that I have signed means I have logged in. That mindset has to be broken. If I have logged onto a system at XYZ time from XYZ location, which is geotagged, that means I have logged in. You should compare that signing of a physical register kept on a desk number A means signing in on a mobile platform. It has got the same credibility, same guarantee of results being accepted. So that cultural change of people adopting to digitization has to be there. That is one. Secondly, to achieve that, whatever solutions are deployed, maybe quick applications or business code optimization, or leveraging so many internet links, or so Wi-Fi or 4G, now 5G as well. Enabling, these are all enabling platforms, they are carriers. So effective use of this carrier to really propagate your business application, to generate confidence and have maximum reporting and maximum inputs from your employees will be very important. So we must understand what carries my business, how to use that carrier to propagate my business. Having done that, how to receive data, accumulate, and keep people informed.
Oh, that's very powerfully articulated, Unmesh, because Siva, from what I've heard from both of you over the last 15-20 minutes that we've spoken, is that organizations, whether they wanted to or not, this disruption, this pandemic has perhaps acted as a natural catalyst towards people starting to think more digitally than, for example, let's say, Siva, between you and I, conversations that we may have had 4 years back. Sure, they were also technology-led conversations, but I think there's been a forceful change in the nature of things where people are now increasingly starting to think digital. Now, that's a good thing for sure. My question to you is, how and what is your essential guidance on how organizations should accelerate this journey so that we move from just being digital to actually thinking digitally native in each of our approaches?
So I think like Mr. Unmesh said, the first thing is from the mindset. Mindset has to change, number one. Number two is that we need to, the technology, as a technology people, we need to provide a very user-friendly systems, or the a working environment where people should be working anywhere, anytime, anything. And there is also, as a technology people, we are also should be very mindful that, like you said, there are lots of people are already waiting for to catch you through cyber thing. So we need to be very careful in terms of IT security and what is coming into your network and what is going out of your network. So I think that we need to be very watchful in that particular perspective, IT security perspective. And we also need to be very careful in terms of how do you continue because of this natural calamities. So how do you ensure that your business continuity is ensured? Because you may think that maybe 20% of the people are coming or 30% of the people are coming, but if you don't have a proper continuity, not only for the business perspective, also from the people perspective, you need to have a proper career progression plan, or from the suppose if you have you may have only a very couple of experts and something, what is that plan, business continuity plan for the human resource? So I think that one portion is many of the organizations are lagging it. I think we also need to concentrate on that particular perspective, according to me. Apart from that, I think we need to have a platform, like it's all going forward, it's all millennials, and you can't have a hardcore systems where you need to have a thick client and you need to punch in and you need to enter, you need to remember the T codes and stuff like that. That is not going to happen henceforth. You need to have a user friendly, and you don't going forward. You may not. You need to have even a functional training. People is required, so it should be as user friendly. Like you just
I mean, really, who taught us how to use WhatsApp? Nobody trained us. We just downloaded it and then we were on. And I couldn't agree with you more. Is that I think increasingly it's got to be made more adaptable for people to adopt in a more enthusiastic manner. Unmesh, same question. How should organizations in India, Indian industry today, accelerate its journey towards digital native thinking in its very core?
Firstly, they have to do an introspection of their organizational operations. They have to clearly categorize what can be digitized and what cannot be digitized. That is one. Then what can be digitized further goes into bifurcation, what should be digitized and what shouldn't be. So you have broken a big task into small granules. So if you address the first most demanding granule, and okay, this can be digitized and this should be digitized. So whatever has to be should be digitized, you have to understand the impact. What if I don't do? I mean, whenever I personally start thinking on any digitization or any rollout of technology, I always follow a book by Edward de Bono called Six Thinking Hats. So you have to wear each of them, and last but not the least, you have to wear the black hat, which is a negative hat. So rather than finding solutions to problem, you need to find out problems in that solution so that people don't come up with them to you when you have to resolve them.
That's very, very
questions before they arise. And that could be one of the good way to lay foundation for digitization of your company's ERP or any other processes successfully.
That's very interesting, but I do have a view on the clock, gentlemen. I'm going to come to you with one question each. Siva, when you kind of look at all of this, and given your vast experience, and for this wonderful audience that's listening in and tuning in with us today, my question really is, what is your advice and guidance to them on the kind of pitfalls they should avoid when they embark on a journey which is increasingly going to be digital, and of course is going to pretty much help them reimagine the very concepts of work? What is your advice, Siva?
I think there's always been a concern saying that people started working from home, their productivity is at stake. That is what the business people think. So I think we need to have some kind of measures to identify what is that productivity. How are you going to measure the productivity, irrespective of you are sitting in office or at home or anywhere in the world. So that one thing is, I think deliverables are put it very in the black and white, and the productivity measures are monitored and measured. That is one thing I think as a business person, people think that it is not possible to work from home, or it is that is one thing I think we need to have. Maybe it varies, depends on the department to department, function to function. So that kind of metrics, and maybe there is anything can be measured through a tool or any platform. So that is one thing I think which will need to be which will help the organization as well as the people who are at the side. And obviously the technological platform is anyways user friendly, and can be accessed from anytime, anywhere. So
no, that's fascinating, really. Unmesh, same question, and my other question to you in conclusion is also, of course, what is your essential guidance to IT folks and business folks on the kind of challenges they should avoid to be able to really seize the opportunity? And my last question, of course, to you is, do you think now with the whole concept of reimagining work by itself, our traditional methods of productivity should change?
I would like to answer that question in multiple parts, in short statements. I remember the first ice cream that I had was vanilla ice cream. We should start digitization and propagation of digital. So start with simple steps, reform them, and then you can have an ice cream sundae with all sorts of flavors, all sorts of decorations on it. This will help us to really make people adapt to this digitization, and they'll be very friendly and very used to you consuming this platform.
No, that's very powerfully articulated, gentlemen, but that's pretty much what I have time for. This is obviously a conversation that we could discuss this, and it requires much more time. But for this segment, that pretty much was what we had time for. Mr. Deshpande, Siva, privileged to have spoken with you. Delightful perspectives. Thank you very much for making time to join us.
Thank you, Arjun.
thank you, Arjun. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And for the audience, stay tuned. We'll be back with the next segment in just a moment.
Wow, that was indeed fantastic. I'm sure all of you cherish the diverse inputs. Thank you, Mr. Unmesh Deshpande and Mr. Siva Subramanian N. Thank you, Arjun. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for our upcoming segment, let's change the game. What if a few of you, esteemed business and technology leaders, join us and share your innovation experience and success stories? That would be terrific, I suppose. Let's hear real-life, India-specific innovation examples from eminent customers who've agreed to join us today. For our Profiles in Success segment, let's welcome Mr. Vasudevan Subramaniam, the Managing Director, New Wave Computing Private Limited, and Mr. Anil Sharma, General Manager IT, AP Operations for Hanon Automated Systems. They're going to be in conversation with Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, the Chief Research Officer, StrategINK. I'd now like to hand it over to Arjun.
Hello and welcome back. We are now in this segment titled Profiles in Success, where we examine and celebrate technology transformation as well as business transformation undertaken by a host of companies. And to talk about that today, we have, and please join me and put your hands together to welcome Mr. Anil Sharma, General Manager IT for South Asia for Hanon Systems. Mr. Sharma, welcome. Delighted that you could join us today.
Thank you.
And to present the OEM side of the story, please put your hands together to welcome Vasudevan Subramaniam, Managing Director, New Wave Computing. Vasu, delighted that you could join us. Welcome.
Thank you, and truly my privilege, Arjun.
Thank you. Mr. Sharma, I'm going to come to you directly with what promises to be a very fascinating and I'm personally very curious, and I speak on behalf of the audience here, is we understand that your overall infrastructure modernization project that you undertook was undertaken in keeping with mind your desire to modernize infrastructure towards a more resilient and future-proof business organization in obvious view of fairly reimagined realities and the influx of a digital workforce. Might I ask you, Mr. Sharma, what were the opportunities that you observed and that you wanted to seize that made you embark on this journey? Mr. Anil Sharma.
Seeing the current scenario, a lot of manufacturing business plans are moving towards a digitalization. In pace with the business plan, IT also has to be moved towards to adopt a lot of emerging technologies like to meet the business expectation towards the digitalization.
That's really interesting. But I must also ask you, what were the opportunities that you saw, especially given the backdrop of the recent disruption that we've had? Your vision, therefore, translated into what, Mr. Sharma?
So to meet the our business digitalization requirement, definitely we have to prepare ourselves, like in terms of infrastructure movement and virtualization for having the high capacity for the storage. Those kind of things is required technology, because day by day the size of the data is going to be increased, right? Yeah, so we have to, in terms of storage capacity, in terms of the technology, in terms of the infrastructure, which could support the business growth in the future, at least for the 5 years.
Outstanding, and that's very powerfully articulated, Mr. Sharma, because Vasu, I want to bring that to you. Really, it's very fortuitous what Mr. Sharma just said, and spoke about the whole concept of modernization to build value and scale. And Vasu, if I may be allowed to, and with your permission, of course, is that in many, many ways, and whichever angles that you look at, infrastructure modernization is increasingly equivalent or commensurate to business transformation. So Vasu, my question to you is, from New Wave Computing's point of view, when you were handed over the project, how did you even approach the whole project, and really what innovation did you bring to the whole scheme of things?
Thank you. So Hanan Systems, wanted to upgrade their legacy IT infrastructure, and so together, eventually, we ended up, transforming it to a VxRail hyperconverged infrastructure. And the reason we did that was because Hanan Systems wanted to build a very strong foundation to run all their virtual workloads and modern applications. So the outcomes they actually wanted from this initiative are of two folds. One is they wanted to build an agile and a resilient IT infrastructure, and secondly, they also wanted to have a sustainable and a cost-efficient IT operating model. New Wave being a hybrid cloud integrator, we specialize in building this for our customers. Just to put it in perspective, our solutions team, after a detailed discussion with Hanan Systems team, we proposed a hyper-converged infrastructure, which can eventually evolve itself into a hybrid cloud infrastructure. So therefore, we positioned VxRail offering from Dell Technologies as our recommendation for the project. So what is interesting is that VxRail is the only HCI solution that is jointly engineered as one, manufactured as one, managed as one, supported as one, and sustained as one between Dell and VMware. So if you ask me what could Hanan System achieve through this project, they were able to take charge of their own deployments at their own pace. Second, they could expand and scale when and where they needed. It also improved their operational efficiency significantly, and lifecycle management of the entire operations became very, very easy. So with VxRail Manager, they can now actually also have a single plane of control that actually simplifies their operations and management. So overall, what Hanan System got, was a system that could really move at the speed of a system that actually could move at the speed of their business. That's what they achieved in this project.
That's quite fascinating, because Mr. Sharma, I'm going to kind of bring that to you by really asking you, now that you are through with the project, as you chart more resilient and forge more accelerated journeys forward, within industry, whether that's meeting more consumer demand or meeting diverse demands from consumers. How are you looking at this entire journey having panned out? And what does it therefore now give you the ability to achieve in the future that you may traditionally not have imagined? Mr. Anil Sharma.
Yeah, so by getting the VxRel project, I think we are very lucky to have implemented into our operations. Honestly, this helps us to, one of the things, as Vasu said, that this is agile to manage the whole infrastructure, and this is one technology which helps us to manage and keep the storage capacity in pace with the high demand of the business. And from the IT management point of view, this is very easy to manage because all comes together into one box. So that is the good technologies. I believe that, and this help us a lot to manage in terms of IT as well as the business requirement also.
Yes, I couldn't agree more, Mr. Sharma, but I think in the same breath, it would be an injustice if I were not to perhaps ask you. So in the overall project, right from identification to selection and therefore to actual completion, what have been your biggest learnings from New Wave?
So biggest learning?
What is their ability to strive to your levels of excellence at Hanan Systems?
So the professional touch, I believe that the professional approach from the New Wave, it's fantastic. And their approach, how to approach to the customer and design the solutions based upon our requirement and the need, not just pushing the technology to deploy, and giving all the solutions based upon our requirement and meeting and try to meet our requirement and have the customer satisfied. I think we are very happy with the approach, starting from the approaching to us, solution designing, implementing, then after support also we are getting very good feedback from them.
So in summary, you'd say that they approach the problem or the opportunity really, and I stand corrected. It's not as much a problem as an opportunity that you had envisioned.
Yeah, it's a part.
They approached it more from a business process angle rather than a technology angle. Something that industry is clamoring for today. Is that a fair statement to make, Mr. Sharma?
Yes, that's correct.
That's quite fascinating, really, because I think increasingly as we look at industrial transformation, we are significantly looking at partners who can understand business challenges as well as business opportunities, and then apply perhaps the technology lens to it. But Vasu, I must bring that to you.
Yeah.
What enables new wave computing and in your partnership with Dell to strive for the levels of perfection and perhaps excellence that Mr. Sharma has so supremely articulated? Vasu.
With Hanan Systems, we began our engagement, with a very strong intent to deliver on outcomes that they wanted. So first, we identified the specific IT transformation needs they have in mind. So thereafter, we started initiating some workshops. So where we evangelize Dell Tech solutions that addresses those needs. These workshops allowed us to gain a lot of insights into Hanan Systems environment and the current systems and methods being adopted to manage the challenge at hand. So they liked our proposition, and therefore we moved forward then to do some assessment in their environment. These assessments are nothing but some tools and Q&A conversations. So this activity will result in building the right solution with the right sizing that would work for Hanan Systems. Post this, we then go on to building a business case for some customers to explore the economic value that a project can actually deliver. So based on all of these merits, we further move to a stage where we show and tell, because some customers want a POC. This activity of POC actually eliminates any key concerns on the success and viability of a project. And finally, we project manage the rollout along with the Hanan Systems team and further optimize the solution to perfection. So that's how this project actually was approached.
Fairly interesting, but I do have a view on the clock, gentlemen. Mr. Sharma, I must ask you a question that promises to be as fascinating as the answer that you will articulate, sir. Which is, Mr. Sharma, that now that your infrastructure stands modernized, your ability to counter disruption stands much more solidified. And at an organizational level, perhaps, your resilience stands much more in fortitude, how will you be able to quantify the increase in business outcomes now that this project stands completed? What are you going to be able to achieve quantifiably that you may not have thought of earlier in terms of quantifiable business outcomes? Mr. Anand Sharma.
So if you are talking about quantify the business output, basically I'm seeing that by implementing the VS Rail project, at least we are meeting the business requirement for the data in storage for at least 5 years. So we have not to bother that about the storage capacity, right? So this is one of the major advantage for us, since we are implementing a lot of various applications for the business use that required a lot of data storage. Now we are working for the IoT, for the manufacturing systems that is also required a lot of data storage. So VxRail is one of the very good project we implemented, which meeting our at least business requirement at least for the 5 years now. So this is one of the major
question. With your permission, Mr. Sharma, do you feel that by virtue of having accomplished and achieved this project, it also helps you cater to a large digital workspace or a large digital workforce today?
Of course, yeah.
How do you kind of articulate that?
So in terms of, first of all, from the IT perspectives, earlier we are using a lot of legacy like media agent server different and storage different. Now everything comes into the one place. So our cost for ownership is also reduced, right? And maintaining the systems with the less efforts, it is also good for us. And the speed. The speed is very good in terms of data storage, accessing the server applications and retrieving the data. All those things is very good.
That's actually quite fascinating, really, and it's been fantastic. But Vasu, in conclusion, I must come to you, and in your narrative of the convergence of the ethos between Dell Technologies and the innovation that they bring, plus new wave computing, how does that kind of pan out for industry as it approaches complex journeys of forging more resilient marches ahead towards value acceleration?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, partners like us, like I mentioned, you need a very strong technology partner, to bring in transformative, solutions to market. We need a partner who can bring in continuous innovation, reinvention, reengineering across their portfolio. So we at New Wave, we have established very strong practices, like I said, and build the entire team, pre-sales, post-sales, deployment. So you've got to build the entire competency across the organization and have a very consultative mindset. So we've done that. We built these practices and we have a strong depth of portfolio with us. So this allows us to actually deliver transformative solutions, across the edge, core, and the cloud infrastructure needs of our customers. Be it in workforce transformation, ID transformation, or security transformation, we have a comprehensive Dell Tech proposition for our customers. So that's my.
Completely agree, and I think this has been quite the symbiotic conversation of sorts, gentlemen, where clearly business requirements and business opportunities met the kind of assessments and approaches where technology just plays the foundational enabling layer, but that business outcomes continue to remain as sacrosanct. Mr. Sharma, Vasu, thank you. It has been a fascinating set of conversations. I'm very happy that you managed to take out time from your busy schedules, and I'm sure this wonderful audience that's here tuning in with us today stands much the better for having heard this fascinating story of the VxRail, driving more business agility as well as catering to an increasingly digital workforce. Thank you so much, Mr. Sharma. It has been a privilege.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you, Arjun.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Sharma. Thank you.
And for the audience, that was I, Arjun Vishwanathan, your host, with Mr. Anil Sharma from Hanan Systems and Vasudevan Subramaniam from New Wave Computing. Stay tuned with us. We'll be back with the next segment in just a moment.
Thank you, Vasudevan. Thank you, Anil and Arjun. That was indeed engaging. With that, ladies and gentlemen, our next segment is the Innovation Diaries. It is widely accepted that innovation is a primary source of competitive advantage for companies in essentially all industries and environments. It drives efficiency, productivity, and differentiation to fill a higher variety of needs. Industry today needs a productivity boost from innovation and new frontier technologies to support growth. How are technology innovators helping companies in introducing new ways of working and helping organizations navigate complex journeys to resilience and the ability to combat disruption? To know more, let's hear it from Mr. Srihari Dhandapani, who's the Enterprise Architect, Global Transformation Office, Asia Pacific for Dell Technologies, and Mr. Ramprasad Srinivasan, Director, Public Sector Sales, Asia Pacific, Client Computing Group, Intel, who are in a conversation with Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan, Chief Research Officer, StrategINK. Over to you, Arjun.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, and I'm going to be joined today by two very, very eminent subject matter experts in their own right to pretty much speak about the whole concept of the tenets of the future of work. Because while it is widely accepted that innovation is a primary source of competitive advantage for companies, in essence, all industries and environments are striving today to drive increasing measures of efficiency, productivity, collaboration, and differentiation to drive that important aspect of hyper-competitiveness and differentiation. How does technology, therefore, fit into the concepts of the future of work or work in a reimagined set of realities is what the concepts of our conversation are going to be. And to join me in dialogue, please put your hands together to welcome Srihari Dhandapani, Enterprise Architect, Global Transformation Office, Asia Pacific, Dell Technologies. Srihari, welcome and delighted that you could join us.
Thank you, Arjun. It's always a pleasure to connect on such a platform. And hope all are well and safe.
Absolutely. And Ramprasad Srinivasan, Director Public Sector Sales, Asia Pacific, the Client Computing Group at Intel. Ram, delighted, welcome, and deeply, deeply grateful that you could take time out.
Welcome. Thank you, Arjun. Thank you, Shriri. Nice to connect on the platform. Yeah.
Gentlemen, we've got an interesting 30 minutes ahead, and I'm going to directly kind of jump into it. And Srihari, if I may be allowed to call you Sri. Sri, if I would directly to come to you, the physical office or the physical workspace as we knew it stands decomposed today. And in a perhaps natural manner, there's been the emergence of a digital workforce. And of course, we've had the backdrop of the pandemic and the disruption that it has perhaps caused industry today. When you kind of look at all of this and given your wide vista of visibility towards industry, what are your opening remarks on how the future of work or the concepts of the future of work are going to emerge in the months and the years to come? Srihari Dhandapani.
Brilliant question, Arjun, to start with. Gone are those days where digital workspace was an option. When we engage with customers, it is always an option that they asked was, my set of employees needs to be available at any given point in time. It was only an option. But today it's more a mandate. I still have a lot of customers who are having transactions and conversations with me on trying to adopt modern workspaces because there are no data center accesses, there is no office premises access. So first is VDI has become, or workspaces become, or more a mandate. The second most interesting response to your question is, it's all about IoT. It's all about Internet of Things. It's the demand of the customer today who says that I want my workforce to be connected from anywhere, from any device and any time. So which means we are in a position to create and establish a platform where the customer's resources, workforce, for their production revenue to continue to generate has to be accessible at any point in time from any device, could be simultaneous or synchronous or monochrome, at any given point in time as well. So data, which is becoming the new oil, like I heard somewhere, this data needs to be available across zones, across locations, and across devices as well. That's the kind of new workspace that we're speaking today. You're connected from location A, I'm connected from location B, and Mr. Ram is connected from location 3, from 3 different devices, but we're accessing one single platform. That's the kind of platform what the workspace today or tomorrow is expecting tomorrow. And that's even more getting even more aggressive in penetration, because it demands a lot of bandwidth, it demands a lot of redundancy and robustness. And that's the kind of offering that we jointly with Dell and any other OEMs are planning to prescribe to customers so that it stands robust. If that answers your
that's quite interesting, because Ram, I'm going to bring that to you. Sri spoke about the ability to stay connected anytime, anywhere. And pretty much if you look at the last 15, 16 odd months, employees, folks like you, me, and Sri, we pretty much adapted to being able to work from anywhere, whether that's the bedroom or the dining room or the bathroom, really, to give it some frivolous bent. However, my question equally, and one that begs understanding, examination, and merit, is our remote workspaces and digital workspaces sustainable, considering that there are equally enterprise expectations of productivity, collaboration, and at the end of the day, innovation? Ram Prasad Srinivasan.
Yeah, thanks, Arjun. Great question, and a follow on to what Sri mentioned earlier, right? So I think we're all aware that digital transformation was very much underway, right? And I think we were all in the midst of that, yes, ourselves as companies, then our customers themselves. And all of it has got accelerated through the pandemic situation. There is not one segment that was not disrupted or was found to be, looking at solutions, right? It could be education, it could be enterprises, it could be anything, right? Healthcare, obviously, right? So all of these kind of came out and showed, on the one way, there was transformation underway, but it got accelerated, right? To ensure that you deliver the services that you need. So we did see a lot of business continuity processes, solutions that people are looking for. Education, certainly people are looking for, right? So, trying to get, education to continue in a uninterrupted kind of a fashion. Yes, challenges existed in terms of access, in terms of connectivity. But I think the biggest, learning, I think, from all of this is, it is upon us. It is a new reality. And I think we're all figuring out ways and means of making the best out of it. For example, in education, I think it'll going to be, hybrid way going forward. It may not be ever just be face-to-face, right? It could be, and not just online like what it is today. It could be somewhere in between as a hybrid. Likewise, in an enterprise workspace where, as we mentioned, the transformation was very much underway. It is now more that work can go where talent is, right? Earlier, it was the other way around. The talent had to find a place in a major city or, in a campus or something like that. But what this pandemic situation kind of showed us, or rather forced upon us, and hence the new normal, that work can go where the talent is. Yes, you could probably see some challenges in terms of, infrastructure availability. That is where I think a lot of CIOs and others will start looking at solutions. How can they get their connectivity better? And of course, when you talk of enterprise, security is paramount, right? When somebody is working in a remote location, wherever they are, yes, they're productive. How do you make them more productive, continue to be productive, and ensure that they measure up to the organizations or the enterprise security needs, right? Those are some of the areas where I think we are seeing some work going on.
No, but because I quite liked what you said there, and I'm picking up one particular point where you said work, therefore, today has the ability to go where the talent is. Sri, because I'm bringing that to you. What does that bode for Indian industry by and large? Are we, therefore, in your estimate and your experience and your visibility, are we looking at a situation where the digital workspace or the future of work really will not just be geographically more dispersed. It may also mean new tasks, new responsibilities, new sets of accountabilities, new metrics. And therefore, will the concept of work by itself stand transformed in the months or the years to come?
No, it has already transformed. At least in 2020, it had a leap of a start. In 2021, it's already transformed. Let me take my own testimony. I used to serve the India go-to-market until it was all physical. Reason being was my role was to wear a consultant hat and meet the customers in India go-to-market day in and day out. Now with 2020 and 2021, with so much of pandemic, my role has been expanded to a APJ spectrum. So which means what does it make a difference? The conversation that I'm having with India market today is the same conversation I end up having with Singapore market as well, right? It's only the platform that connects. As far as the requirement gathering is concerned, it's the same conversation, except for a physical whiteboard, I probably use a virtual whiteboard. And that's all. And so we've already transformed to that elevation. And the second aspect of it is, like Ram rightly said, we were already in the verge of adoption. Like some stalwarts of the industry said that what could have happened in 2 decades, pandemic forced us to accelerate this transformation in a period of 12 months. So the adoption rate also has increased. Like rightly Ram said, tell me one vertical and business entity was not adopted into transformation today. The largest of all is the healthcare. We're dealing day in and day out about how unstructured data of these COVID databases needs to be processed from the time a patient gets in and from the time he gets in to be, prescribed and then monitored and gets out, completely going paperless. Those are the kind of hospitals who were relying on series of records and database. And today they don't even have a database room. They're talking about more and more DC and DR, which is to be deployed in infrastructure, because it's all about data handling. It's all about automation of data. So I think the adoption rate as catalyst has been pandemic. It's been the catalyst which is expedited. And I think we're already there, part of the transformation, adopting to this.
That's interesting because Ram, if I were to come to you, and before I jump into my even more interesting questions, is therefore, do you somewhere perhaps perceive or estimate that the concepts of reimagining work may tend to be inadvertently catalysts to organizations and enterprises being able to transform themselves to doing more than they had traditionally dreamt of? So somewhere my question is have the experiences of the last 15, 16 months now perhaps proved a natural catalyst for organizations to become more digitally native and therefore to be able to truly transform themselves and achieve more than what they could have ever imagined about?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Arjun. As we said, again, I go back to the fact that transformation is already underway, right? And as you start to look at attracting and retaining some of the best talent, which is coming through, the education system and all that, their expectations of technology and what the corporate or the enterprise expects of technology have to merge, right? And that's an interesting challenge, right? And exciting one as well. Because I can speak for myself. Someone like me, I got access to technology only when I got to work, right? I had not seen technology before that. That's not the case with the the next generation workforce that's coming through, and many of them are well versed with technology, albeit from a different segment, but they understand what technology is and what it can do to them, and hence their expectations of what the company that they're getting into should be able to give to them is something, again, different and challenging and exciting. And one of the studies which we had done, I think a couple of years ago, which suggested that a new worker who wants to come into a new place, and he is more likely to leave the company if they are stuck with archaic methodologies of work, right? So which means it's all about unleashing the talent, being able to unleash the potential of and the creativity of the workforce, right? And if they perceive anything is coming in the way of that, they are more likely to leave than stick around. And that in turn gives an opportunity, while a challenge, also an opportunity to employers, right? When they look at how do they attract and retain the best talent, which means then they need to start gearing up for some of those expectations, right? And bring them into their plans as they go about deploying their enterprise systems, so to say, right? And that could be work from anywhere, the collaboration. And as you rightly said, we all, on one hand, I'm certainly thankful for a lot of us in this field where we can work from anywhere and be productive and get paid for it. I know the situation is not that easy outside, and hence we're certainly thankful for that opportunity that we have. But again, that's another interesting nuance, right? As I said, so companies will be looking at areas that they should be catering to the workforce as they come in.
No, that's Sri. That's brilliantly articulated, Ram, and thank you for that. Because Sri, I'm going to come to you and request you to put on your technologist hat. Because let's face it, the adoption as well as our ability to adopt and adapt to, well, new circumstances as they have emerged over the last 15 months has been fairly commendable. We've also proved our resilience to a large degree. But the perpetual, or what is called the eternal dichotomy of employee experience versus enterprise expectations is, well, easily spoken about, but it's quite the complex balance to achieve. Now at Dell and in your partnership with Intel, how do you guys kind of forge together innovation, new solutions to be able to help industry adapt better, navigate this journey in a much more easier fashion, if I may be allowed to call it that? How do you guys?
200%. If not, we're out of the game. We don't even exist here. If we don't have that innovation in this platform, we'll be out of the game. And I'll tell you a real-time scenario. Days where you deploy infrastructure and you have a ton loads of team to manage the infrastructure and then serve the demand of the application owner. Every organization, innovation is the key aspect, and innovation comes from the core of development teams. Now, if we don't meet the demands of development teams, then there's no innovation there. It becomes stalled in there.
Indeed.
Now, in today's footprint, already we are speaking about data center footprint to be very less. That's what is anticipated. And today, now you don't have access, and you don't get to access the data center with all the regulations and with all the government regulations that we have. We are speaking about platforms that can self-sustain. We are speaking about platforms that can self-manage. We're embedding AI and ML to the basic of the platform as a management, which means when there's an anomaly which has been deducted, we are supplying platforms that can self-handle and self-heal before it could even bring in a catastrophic effect on development. This is as part of the AI and ML abilities that we bring forth. Jointly with Intel, we have tested our recent generation of product offerings with their chipsets, just to ensure that these AI ML codes can be conducted and translate that into a real product per se. The second part of it is the demand of, like you said, I like the question, the demand of enterprise versus how the handling is being done. It's completely a double-edged sword, and I'll tell you why. Because when there is velocity of work that increases today, nobody is even clocking the amount of hours that you're working. It's absolutely a velocity work. When this velocity of working that you're doing, it could be in your own BDI dumb box, or it could be your own workstations. There's so much of resources that elastically change and differs. And also, to draw a point of what Ram said, we follow the talent. The job code of somebody, a developer, keeps changing very, very transformatively or very drastically, where the velocity of the resources, what he requires in this platform also changes. That is where we are speaking of a platform which is elastic in nature, which is auto-provisioning in nature. As the employee A changes his way of working from type A to type B, in language of virtualization, we call it as a task worker to probably a power user. A task worker is the one who's known to do a monotonous set of tasks, but suddenly changes into a power user just because he's been pumped more into develop, right? such kind of users today in pandemic, we're speaking of platform that can serve as demand and provision as the resources automatically depending on the ways the application pattern is being consumed. So auto provisioning is something which has become a mandate today. There is an approval protocol, which means has to be somebody who is approving from the cost center, but there's no longer an administrator who sits and expands his instances just because the developers asked. An application pattern of a developer who's been consuming for a period of 7 days has changed from 40% to 70%, which means dynamically his resources that he needs to generate that production also increase. So we're speaking about AI, ML, intelligence, self-sustaining platform, self-managing platform, and giving access directly to the developers. And that's where all your conversation about Kubernetes comes in. So we are giving the platform access to the developers, not cutting the queue of system administrators, but system administrators becomes the backend pillar, but developers are starting to access the infrastructure directly as much as they will.
That's quite interesting. And Ram, I'm going to bring that to you. Sri basically, in a brilliant manner, articulated the ability of technology to enable employees today to do more. And Sri, if I were to kind of boil that down into three, more. But I must equally ask you, at Intel and in, of course, your larger partnership with Dell Technologies, how are you folks kind of bringing together innovation and technology to craft solutions that will help industry truly bring about a convergence of human capital at one end with technology to create a digital core that will help spur the acceleration of progress?
Yeah, no, thank you. I think Sri articulated that part well. So I'd like to add on to that and how some of what we do kind of manifests itself in the real world through their products, right? And then one of the most fascinating thing for me has been, not just what we do, but how people tend to use it, right? Our OEMs and then the end customers themselves, right? Many times we may not have visualized how some of the technology that we put in place will eventually get used. We have a fair idea, but we always get very positively surprised at some of the innovation that happens through our OEM partners such as Dell, and eventually the customers, how they deploy those solutions in place. And I take it back to the earlier point I was making that the transformation is very much upon us and we were all a part of it. Intel as a company is going through a transformation itself, right? And I will touch upon the innovation part as I talk about it. We were historically known as a CPU-only company, right? Now we are moving more towards an XPU company, as in we have different architectures, we have CPUs, we have XPUs, we have ASICs, we have FPGAs, combination of all of this to show up on a platform that delivers what our OEM partners need, and as well as the end customer solutions get resolved. And secondly, it's more about the platform, right? As in, from being just a component provider, we are now more of a platform provider, wherein we have expanded, the capability that we have with the innovation that we bring, so that there's a better solution to a problem. It could be fundamentally think about it as rich data sets being created today, and I think she referred to data as the new oil, right? Yes, so very rich data sets are being created, and we are barely harnessing a very small percentage of that yet. And the amount of intelligence that exists in the data that's getting generated is enormous. Why is it getting generated? Because it can be done, right? I mean, earlier it could not be. Today you can, and hence you're generating so much of it. How do you use it to get better insights and ensure that you use those insights to your business advantage is where a lot of work is going on. And let me tell you, we are only at the entry stages of those, right? And that's going to be the future, right? And then as a manufacturer also, we're looking at a disaggregated design from our side so that we can bring the best of what's required to ensure that we continue to deliver products, leadership products on an annual cadence, predictable cadence. So those are some of the transformational journeys that we have undergone, are undertaking ourselves. And also when it comes to the overarching product design also, right? We now look at multiple pillars within a platform that we can go and innovate. Earlier, it used to be the process and the architecture, right? It continues to be a key element, but they're no longer the only defining elements. because in many cases, as Sri would probably understand this very well as well, the limitation may not necessarily be at the CPU level at all. The bottlenecks could be elsewhere, right? So you may have a great performing CPU, but if there are bottlenecked by connectivity and other challenges, you will not unleash the potential of what's possible. So we look at process, we look at architecture, we look at interconnects, right? For example, as we get into the new era of highly integrated SoCs, right? The latency levels that we need to take care of so that they don't bring down the performance is incredible, right? So some of the interconnects and the packaging technology that we have as a part of it, which manifests itself in the latest 7th generation core platform that is now currently available with the on the client side, right? So that's an example, packaging, right? And then you get into memory subsystems, right? Again, if you look at some of the challenges, the bottlenecks could be in the memory space. So we have technologies like Optane. I think Sri knows this very well, where we have Optane persistent memory that we provide on our latest generation Xeon platforms for data center. It's also now, a lot of the instruction sets there have got pulled into the client side as well. So many of the AI inferencing workloads can be passed to the edge so that you get much better responsiveness there. Likewise, security, right? I mean, as you look at people working anywhere, we put a lot of our security work in the hardware. Not to say it's impossible to break it, but you make it more and more difficult, right? Nothing can be, as we know, ever completely secure. You try to make it more and more secure. And the more that you put in hardware is a lot more difficult for it to be broken. Sum it all off, we do work with a lot with the industry, right? Partners such as Dell and the software ecosystem, like be the operating systems and the other ISVs, who can take advantage of all that we put in the platform so that ultimately end users benefit. Because if the end systems cannot utilize what we put in through the software or whatever, then it's a wasted piece of silicon, right? So we do work across all those pillars to ensure that we deliver great experience. And as I said, that gets manifested itself in the real world through wonderful products from Dell.
No, that's truly brilliant also, because well, I do have a view on the clock, gentlemen. We've got about 4-5 odd minutes, but I must ask both of you, and Sri, if I could come to you first. Therefore, if you were to kind of look at the overall experience that Dell Technologies brings to the table in your partnership with Intel, as well, an unnatural or maybe a natural catalyst of the disruption, how in your summary, how in your articulation from the perspective of Dell Technologies, are you helping industry? And I ask this on behalf of this wonderful audience that's tuning in with us today, is how are you helping organizations craft, orient, and orchestrate connected workspaces without boundaries of space?
Okay. Good question to close. We invite every customer because we are in the toughest times, and we are here to help. We are here to move the mountains. When I say move the mountains, we are here to help customers not go radically out of the race. We are here to establish the barest or minimum platform in the journey of transformation. And there's so much of innovation that's happening where we can accommodate any format of workload. And just one quoting example to close and hand over back to Ram. We run enormous test cases on every format of workload. And there's millions of investment that goes jointly with partnership with be it Intel or series of VMware product portfolio within Dell. What we basically take is, we take workloads of customers very, very seriously. Before we could go and position a product or an offering to meet the problem statement, we not only just position the product, but rather we say, these are the test cases that's already been analyzed. And exactly like how Mr. Ram said about latency, we take very, very serious concentration about not just selling off and running away, but rather we assure that latency is being taken. Because if we'll have to talk about a hybrid cloud architecture here, where the data has to flow from an on-prem location to an edge, which could be localized data center, and to a hyperscaler, just because the customer already has a subscription, latency plays the most important role. We can't keep waiting for minutes together before data gets failed over from an on-prem to a hyperscaler. So every innovation that happens is extremely concentrated to see how long does it take for the data to spill out, or how long does it takes for data to fail over. So the deepest or to be very, very humble here to say is that customers, we take care of those legitimate transaction of your data. We're not interested in what data it is. But regardless of what velocity the data is, we take sincere effort to manage the data without having an impact to your revenue engine. That's my submission.
Outstanding. And Ram, if I could come to you in conclusion, sir, is, well, you articulated Intel's perspective and point of view. But I must ask you in closing, from Intel's perspective, what are those technologies that you're betting big on that will help Intel walk and work with industry to help them craft truly connected workspaces, notwithstanding the confines or the boundaries of space and time?
Yeah, thank you. I think, yeah, I'd like to conclude. Thanks, Sri, for that articulation as well. I'd like to conclude by saying that, we believe rich data sets are best created, transported, analyzed on Intel architecture. That is how we want to position ourselves to be. And we want our technology to touch everyone's life on Earth. That is the vision that we want to go after. Right? And I think that's an enormous one, challenging and exciting as it is. And we do have, the partnerships with Dell through which a lot of those technologies come to life in the real world. And I think, we can definitely leverage off the work that teams in Dell do in terms of consulting with customers to understand real problems and translate that to, solutions. And as I said, I constantly keep getting amazed at the way solutions get deployed and the problems that we get to solve, right, over time. And as a part of that also, what I want to say is, we also are a huge consumer of our own technology, right? In terms of the hybrid cloud, as what she was mentioning, or in terms of, there are over 100,000 clients system that we, Intel IT looks at. So we do have a lot of case studies done on our own usages, which we can certainly help share with, our customers and to make them, not just as a learning, but more understand some of the challenges that we would have seen, because it is we have thousands of servers, and as I said, over 100,000 client systems that we manage at Intel, right? So I think those could serve as good blueprints. And I know Sri and team are aware of that service that Intel can provide. There's a IT at Intel shop that we can bring some of those learnings and work in a collaborative fashion to help solve customer problems.
Fascinating. But gentlemen, how do I put this? It's truly been splendid. A splendid 30 minutes as perhaps if I were to summarize, a very thoughtful, immersive instruction on how to leverage technology to craft more positive and more incremental outcomes. And I'm sure the audience stands much the better for it. Sri, Ram, thank you. It has been nothing short of a privilege having had this dialogue with you. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ram.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
And for the audience, I was your host, Arjun Vishwanathan, and you were seeing me in conversation and in dialogue with Srihari Dantapani from Dell Technologies and Ramprasad Srinivasan from Intel. Thank you. That's pretty much for this segment. Stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a moment with the next segment.
Thank you very much, Srihari and Ramprasad. Thank you, Arjun. That was indeed engaging. Ladies and gentlemen, up next is the Leadership in Focus segment. And to tell us more about this segment and take us through this, I'd now like to welcome Mr. Arjun Vishwanathan once again.
Ladies and gentlemen, I trust that you've enjoyed the content and the conversations with our industry leaders and specialists so far. Our next segment is titled Leadership in Focus. And our intention is to hold a wide set of discussions with eminent personalities to understand their perspectives, experiences, and viewpoints on various facets of technology and life. Without further ado, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome our celebrity speaker for the day. And please put your hands together to welcome none other than Mr. Sonam Wangchuk. Mr. Wangchuk is a winner of the Ramon Magsaysay Award 2018 and is India's most renowned educationalist, environmentalist, and innovator. Mr. Wangchuk is a founder of Students' Education and Cultural Movement of Ladakh, SEMCOL, which aims to bring reforms in the government school system in Ladakh. In 1994, he was instrumental in the launch of Operation New Hope, a triangular collaboration of the government, village communities, and civil society to bring reforms in the government school system. The program involved formation of village education committees to take ownership of state schools, training of teachers in child-friendly ways, and rewriting and publishing localized textbooks for Ladakh. As a result, the pass percentage at 10th grade, which is matriculation, rose from the dismal 5% to 55% in 7 years and 35% these days. An eminent personality indeed. And to moderate this discussion, please also put your hands together to welcome Ms. Ritu Gupta, Head of Marketing, Dell Technologies, India. Ms. Gupta, over to you, please, and we look forward to what promises clearly to be a scintillating conversation.
Mr. Wangchuk, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time out from your schedule to speak with us today. I'm looking forward to a very engaging conversation, and I'm sure so is our audience. We'll start with our first question here, sir. The question is, if you see around us, we are witnessing dramatic changes to both the industrial as well as the societal landscape. How do you see this whole concept of change, and how should change be approached or embraced, and why should we even embrace it to start with? So what are your views on this whole change that's happening around us?
Thank you, and my greetings from Ladakh to all the viewers. Thanks. About change, well, where I live in Ladakh, where Buddhist philosophies have a huge influence on people's thoughts, we say that everything is impermanent. And what is permanent, if any, is this impermanence, change. So change is totally a law of nature, and change will happen whether you like it or not. It's just that who drives that change? If we change just because some people in New York have changed or London have changed, and we just change for the sake of the change, that I have a problem with. And if we remember a beautiful thing that Gandhi said many decades ago, he said, I would like to keep the doors and windows of my house open for all the winds to blow, but I will refuse to be blown off my feet by any of these winds. So as long as you choose what to change and what kind of change and what pace of change, and change for the good of your own context, it's beautiful. But if you just change because you are influenced by some other place or people, then often you stand to lose. So I would say all people, industries, society have to be ready for changes at every point of time. And yes, embrace it, and not just keep embracing, but lead the change also. So that's what my point of view would be.
Very relevant, sir. Not just be the change, but lead the change. One of the things which I think is also driving a lot of change around us now is technology. And we've seen the impact of technology not just within the industry, but also in our daily lives. It has permeated our daily lives like never before, and it's been quite dramatic. How do you see the impact of technology in the future, and both at an industry level as well as at a societal and individual level? What's the impact that technology is going to have on that?
So all technologies, including IT, are tools for human beings to achieve what they want. And what sets apart man from other animals and living forms on this planet is this capacity to use tools. Like when man started using stone tools, it took a different path altogether, with nutrition and everything. Similarly, there was a study a scientific study, I think in Harvard, to see which living being or animal is most efficient when it comes to mobility from one place to another. Efficiency would mean how much energy is used for a kilometer or any unit of distance moved. And they found that in whole of nature, the condor, this huge bird, was the most efficient. And man was way below on the chart, way below. But then somebody remembered to study man with his tools, man with his innovations, man with his bicycle. They found that man on a bicycle is way more efficient than the condor and tops the list of all living beings on this planet with his tool. Now, like bicycle was a great tool that man invented for his body, I think information technology, the computer, is a tool for the brain. As Steve Jobs, I think, said, he sees computers as the bicycle of the mind, bicycle of the brain. So I think we should use and embrace tools, but tools alone are not everything. I mean, knives are tools. They can be used by a surgeon to save a life or by a criminal to take a life. So therefore, the beauty is not in the effectiveness of the tool alone, but in the wisdom of the choice. So I think if we put such tools as technology to good use in our daily lives, to optimize resources, to make our living more efficient, resource efficient, industries use it for that cause also, and not just in, finding out where the most oil is and where the most coal is and exploiting and plundering and making life difficult on the planet itself. So it's as much about the wisdom of choices as it is about the cleverness of technologies, is what I would say.
So very, very, very well said, sir. So technology, not just by itself, but it has the potential to create, and I think the human mind has a potential to create a positive impact out of it. And that wisdom of choice always stays, is always with us, and that is our onus. Very, very well captured. One question for you. Ging, you've been an inspiration for a lot of people, but I'm sure all of our audience would love to know who or what has been a major influence in your life as you are growing up, or who or what shaped the trajectory of your life. Would you want to share something with us on that?
Well, generally, I don't hold one person or one event as an, inspiration or influence, nor do I want to be that. And I take inspiration from so many people who do such wonderful things amidst difficult situations. It could be a farmer, doing his best with the seeds and the water that he has, or some laborer or worker who's very innovative, creative, and despite all hardships, gives a great education and upbringing to their children. All such people inspire me, and I keep my doors and windows open for so many inspirations and influences. But if you were to ask for one person who shaped my trajectory at an early age, then it was my mother. It was my mother in more different ways than people often say, your mother influenced you most. Because in my case, I was born and brought up in such a tiny village in the remote Himalayan region of Ladakh that we had only 5 households and no schools. So I didn't go to any schools till the age of roughly 9 years of age. So my mother was not just my mother, she was my friend, philosopher, guide, teacher. And what influenced me most was that how she would manage things amidst all kinds of adversities, being in a tiny village where you don't have much. Leave aside shops and malls and things, you don't have many people to help you in times of problems. As I shared sometime somewhere, she was so creative and innovative that, you know, when we were little, even matchsticks, which are, you might not value something as little as a matchstick, but in a village that is so remote and on its own, if you don't have matchsticks, you could go hungry, you could not make fire. So she had this resourcefulness of whenever she went to the city to get things, and matchboxes she would get, but you could run out of these at any point. So she would take the first matchbox out of the packet and scatter all the matchsticks in the cupboards and above the kitchen shelf. And I used to wonder why. Why is she doing it? Then she would use the rest of the boxes in the packet, and before all the boxes were finished, you know, we had the reserve of those matchsticks here and there till we get another packet. So it is like the concept of your fuel tank in your car has a reserve indicator where you think it has finished, but it still has 30 to 40 kilometers. So you get to the next fuel station. So she used to manage resources in these beautiful ways, and of course in farming also. And above all, apart from this, what I learned from her was empathy. You're caring for others and not just about yourselves. So this empathy with which she treated any passers-by from the village or the neighbors, taking, you know, the first milk of the cow to the neighbors first before consuming in the home, gave me a feeling that, you know, in life, it's not just about what you need, but what others need also. So these are how I think I learned, and it shaped my choices later. For example, when I finished my engineering, my friends were all going to, you know, Silicon Valley and Bangalore, and I had seen that the education system was in such disrepair that children were failing en masse. So it shaped my choices in that I didn't go to those greener pastures and came back to Ladakh to bring reforms in the education system, and very happy that I could do that.
Very, very, very inspiring, Mr. Mangchuk, and thank you for sharing those inspiring stories with us. With that, we come to the end of our first session. We'll be back soon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sonam Mangchuk and Ms. Ruti Gupta. That was a thought-provoking, engaging, and encouraging discussion. With that, we come to a wrap. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found the Boardroom Unplugged 2.0 informative and useful. I would request you to please take a few moments of your time and fill in the feedback form. We would love to hear your feedback and suggestions. It will help us enhance the content and structure of our virtual conferences. Also, the conference platform remains available now for you to navigate across the exhibit hall, resource center, networking lounge, and chat with experts at the booth. Thank you very much once again for joining us today. I take this opportunity to thank you all on behalf of Dell Technologies, Microsoft, Intel, New Wave Computing, and StrategINK. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great day ahead.